It's time for Rapid Fire, and here to break down the headlines are Kate Rogers, Bill Griffith, and Contessa Brewer. Welcome to everybody. First up, Viacom announcing it acquired the cable rights to Seinfeld. Reruns of the show will air across Viacom properties like TV Land and Comedy Central beginning in 2021. What does this tell us, by the way, about Seinfeld? Anyway, this news just comes days after Netflix, of course, landed the streaming rights for the show. And investors, granted this was partly because of the high price tag, not necessarily buying this news. Netflix shares are down 10% since the deal was announced. They are down 30% since July 1st.
But that market cap wise, that's more than $10 billion.
Yes.
So I'm not saying that there's a correlation, yada, 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 but I am saying that, there's two facts here. You see how I just...
I'm with you.
There's so many Seinfeld jokes we could...
Also, does anyone, anywhere, join Netflix so that they can watch Seinfeld?
Yeah. I joined Crackle for a summer, or was it Hulu? Whoever had Seinfeld, we did a whole summer of Seinfeld.
My thinking on this is evolving. Last week I quit. Dismissing, I thought it was silly, all the money that's being spent on Friends and Seinfeld. However, I saw a story over the weekend about tweens who have discovered Friends and are living it the way we lived it in the 90s when it was on first run. And it's like my generation when we first discovered I Love Lucy. And the reruns, and it extended the life of that. Now, I think Netflix has it right because you can binge watch these shows. Viacom, cable rights, you have to wait every night to watch the next episode. So I think the binging is the key there,
I couldn't agree with Bill more. You asked what this tells us about Seinfeld. It's the greatest show ever. Everybody wants it, right?
But also, when I was growing up, the shows on TV Land and those channels were I Love Lucy.
Right?
So everybody's learning about it now. My very smart cube mate, Sarah Witten, who covers the entertainment space for us, was pointing out to me, too, that you need this legacy content and original content because at some point, Friends or Seinfeld won't resonate with younger teens or tweens. It's great that they're liking it now, but what about the generation after them?
I think this is the big question, just final big question on this, which is Netflix has been criticized for what it spends on original content. Now they're criticized, sort of, for what they're spending on the library of content. It just seems like no matter where you go, the numbers keep going up and up and up.
Please, everybody. Yada, yada, yada.
Master of the domain.
All right, let's talk some Disney. The CEO, Bob Iger, says he walked away from a potential deal to buy Twitter because the platform was too toxic. Iger revealed details of this would-be deal in an interview with the New York Times ahead of his upcoming memoir, and the whole thing is a great read. But Iger said Twitter is a compelling way to reach consumers, but that there are brand conflicts with Disney. And, quote, the nastiness on Twitter, he says, is extraordinary.
I'm stunned that they got that close to buying Twitter. It came to the point where it was literally a last-minute decision by Bob Iger to pick up the phone and call Jack Dorsey and say, we're not going to do this. And he stunned Dorsey.
We used to have covered those shares. Twitter shares would move every day on some other rumor or report that this was or wasn't. Absolutely.
I think he was absolutely right, though. I think that there would have been a brand collision between these two companies. Disney had no business trying to fix Twitter, which they would have to do if they were going to buy this thing.
And just the nastiness that Bob Iger says he sees in his own feed and his mentions, he goes on there to check the news, and the nastiness, as he
Twitter's
put it,
fun when you're looking through the main page until you look at the ads.
But and that would be a great responsibility for them to have to fix it, and certainly something it sounds like he was not open to doing. Kind of bad report for Twitter.
You're not familiar, though, with nastiness on your notifications are all positive,
is
right?
To love me.
Yes, it is.
That's right. There you go.
Do you think that there's a warning in here, though, for the social media companies in terms of business outlook? That the threat or the risk that comes along with people having an open forum to troll, to bully, to say things that are just factually incorrect at all levels of society, that is a risk factor that could get in your way.
And he basically mentions that as well. He says, there are Disney brand issues. There's the whole impact of technology on society. The nasty, and that's where he said, the nastiness is extraordinary. A good point my producer makes, though, is well, there could have been some synergies between ESPN and Twitter because so much of Twitter, when the Giants bill won last night, holy cow, I was on Twitter looking for some, reinforcement.
But by the way, they got
and you got it, too.
Yes, I did.
Yes.
But Disney got that anyway because they went to BAMTech and now they're doing all of these partnerships with the NHL, with soccer, WWE, ESPN Plus, and those are all ways that they can use their synergies, and especially with sports gambling that's coming down the pike, that might benefit them more than Twitter ever would have.
ESPN probably owns Twitter in a better way, which is to say you have to follow Woj and some of these guys without necessarily owning the business model and all that comes with that.
You lose anonymous postings, and a lot of this problem will go away, I think.
That's a great point.
Right?
Look at Facebook. It's certainly better when they don't have that. All right, we'll talk some Bitcoin as well before we move along here. Well, no, as we move along here. Bitcoin futures did officially begin trading on the NYSE last night around 8 p.m. It's part of a venture called Backed In. It's the NYSE's goal to make cryptocurrencies more approachable to investors. The real story here is these will compete with similar futures offered by the CME Group since 2017. CME is preparing to launch options on those futures, so the New York Stock Exchange is playing a little catch-up here.
My thinking on this has not evolved. I still just don't get cryptocurrencies. I mean, I understand the concept and I understand what they want to do with it, but still there is this stigma attached to this.
Absolutely.
And they don't have a payment mechanism, and you still have the reluctance of regulators to do anything about this, which is a problem. You've got countries, whole countries, that are don't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole. So you got real headwinds
but look at
for
the
this
difference.
cryptocurrency
We
thing.
just said Disney thought it was too much of a brand risk to go with Twitter. Is it too much of a brand risk for the New York Stock Exchange to get involved with Bitcoin futures?
I will say, obviously, this, I think, signifies it's become even more and more mainstream, whether people agree or disagree. My own local pizzeria in the city that I live in was offering discounts if you paid with Bitcoin or Litecoin, which to me was bizarre because it's like a mom and pop smaller place. I remember when Seema Moni did this story.
Yes, I
on
remember
Bitcoin,
too.
she could eat at one French restaurant, I think.
There's nowhere to go.
But apparently Backed is also working with Starbucks, to help convert digital cryptocurrencies into ways that people can use them in their store, which is really interesting. Starbucks has obviously leaned very heavily into mobile order and pay. So, I mean, it would be very curious to me if that's how they started accepting payment.
I'm just confused. Like, you have Goldman Sachs here, which does clear Bitcoin futures on the CME for some clients, but it has decided, at least at this point, that it's not going to clear the futures for the Intercontinental Exchange. Why not? What's the difference? There are a lot of unanswered questions surrounding the cryptos and who's getting involved and who's not.
No, it's a great point. And so they're going to need liquidity for this to be successful.
Get it regulated first. You know,
it's like vaping.
See vaping, exactly. I mean, it's exactly the same thing.
I'm with you. Finally, today, this is a wild story. The world's oldest travel firm, Thomas Cook, abruptly collapsed overnight. Now, for me, I thought this was just a travel agency, so you understand, okay, a little bit of a headache. No, it's almost like American Airlines and Hilton collapsing at the same time. Here's why. It's causing a logistical nightmare that's left hundreds of thousands of travelers stranded around the globe, including more than 150,000 Brits. The UK government has called the operation to return these citizens home the biggest peacetime repatriation effort in British history.
Forget about the money center banks. Forget about the insurance giants. If any company should have been called too big to fail, it was Thomas Cook.
They asked for a bailout from the British government.
$250 million or some pounds, or one of those two. So how much are they going to have? And they turned them down. But now how much is the UK government going to have to spend to bring all those people home?
Okay, but wait, the UK government has collected £2.50 per traveler for a long time in this. Basically what it is travel insurance for any of the packaged travel that goes abroad. So whatever outlay the British government is doing now, it's because they've collected money, and the people who bought tour packages or travel packages through Thomas Cook are protected under that, which is why the government is going through this.
There's a moral hazard issue if this company that ran itself into the ground gets that bailout. So interestingly enough, with Thomas Cook, they own some of these airplanes. They own some of these hotels. It's not like they're just sending people on these trips.
But the problem is they can't sell off those assets under an administrator because there's no administrator who knows how to run that complex of a travel bit. I mean, it's an airline, it's a tour operator, and it's a retailer all at once. There's no administrator who knows how to do that. And so they had to go in this liquidation route. Will there be buyers for those assets? Sure. But in the meantime,
they already had the Chinese coming in with a deal to invest some money and try to keep this thing viable for a few more months.
They could have sold to Lufthansa a couple years ago, and they didn't do it, which just, again, shows poor management.
I don't know if we have the image, but if you go to the website, it's extraordinary. It looks like a 1998, screen. It just says, "We're sorry, this company, there it is. We're sorry. The UK business has ceased trading with immediate effect." It's just a
And I think they were asking, some of the hotels were asking some of the 150,000 people who were stranded there to pay again.
Right.
Can you imagine?
And the British government is saying, don't do that because you're protected. You've got this insurance through our British government.
Although I read about 300 Swedes are stranded on Corfu until Friday because they can't get the arrangements to go home, and they're saying, okay, we'll just stay.
Boris Johnson did say he'd get everyone home.
Yeah, he will,
so
eventually.
We'll see about that.
Chartering flights.
There
it is wild. Guys, thank you all. Kate Rogers, Bill Griffith, Contessa Brewer.